next panel session. The topic is developing business-focused strategies for IoT, edge computing and 5G. So introducing first our moderator, Anoop, Information Security Manager for Gulf News, followed by our panelists, Mahmoud, Moussa, Senior Cloud Solution Architect Data and AI for Microsoft, followed by Ahmad Altarawneh, Senior Strategic Transformation Consultant for Dubai Police General HQ, Biju Hamid Kayal, Head of Technology Infrastructure Operations for Dubai Airports, and last but not least, Alethea Davis, former CDO of ADDA, founder and CEO of Alstrada. Would you help me welcome them to the stage? Thank you.
Welcome to this panel, and thanks W.Media for inviting us for this panel. And myself, Anoop, I am from Gulf News. I had the information security. I have a few years experience, around 20 years experience in information security and governance, and also a decent amount of IT domain experience as well. I would like the panel to introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. My name is Alethea Davis. I'm known as a serial chief data officer. I had many positions as a chief data officer, managing everything data, knowledge, information for banks, insurance companies, governments, among others. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mahmoud Moussa. I am a cloud solution architect for data and AI in Microsoft. Been there for the past 18 years of my career. Focusing mainly on the partner business and how can we build solutions with partners related to IoT and data and artificial intelligence.
My name is Dr. Ahmad Altarawneh. I'm one of the senior consultants for the Chief Commander of Dubai Police for Dubai Police. Mainly responsible for transformation, both digital and business. And happy to be here. Hope we can add something to your day.
Afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Biju Hamid. I've been a cybersecurity practitioner for over 2 decades. I'm recently transitioned into operations, technology operations. And for the past few years, I've been involved with academia as well, working for research capacity. What I bring to you is roughly about 15 years of aviation cybersecurity experience.
That's fantastic. We have expertise here. So, to start, the topic here is that basically edge computing and IoT and communication, 5G around it. So, we all are on a transformation journey, definitely, and also cloud adoption happened, right? So, now the question about edge computing, how it is going to be, is that the future? What are the opportunities and challenges? So, let's ask few questions. Mainly, I think everybody has got that worry about number of IoT devices increasing and what is 5G? Is that going to meet our communication expectations? What's the security around it? So let's ask this question. Where do I start? I start with Moussa about the first question. Yeah, Moussa being a solution architect, understand about about what is the importance of this edge computing and what do you think it's the future?
One word? Yeah, perfectly. So edge. Edge is a very interesting topic because if you look at our history, we started from mainframes where everyone is connected to devices through just cables in order to access data that's located in one centralized location. With the vast variety and the speed of internet came in play, we changed all our models into client-server model where we just start to give access to users closer to them so you can do some computing capability at your home or at your office and send that data back to the servers. Now we're talking cloud. Because now cloud business is about how can we transport back everything into a centralized area, have more computing capacity, have more power over there in order to access and work with the data. But when we client-server model, you were actually humans talking to machines. So we were the one who was responsible for working on the data. Now, in the era of IoT, we have massive amount of devices connected to the internet. So we need to find a way in order to aggregate that amount of information back into a centralized location, which is the cloud. We're expecting that number to grow massively in the next few years. So we need a way to aggregate that data closer because we're looking for real-time analytics, real-time numbers, before we actually send data to the cloud for a round trip and come back to us with results. And that's why edge is very important, because you need to have information as fast as possible, closer to your sensors, closer to your devices, in order to get the data and send it back to the cloud for more information.
To Biju, actually, such exposure of that distributed data processing and also the connectivity, number of IoTs increasing, what would be the challenge in terms of operational risk, or it's more of an opportunity?
Yeah, it's both actually, because it's a double-edged sword, right? So there is a big need, and what we've seen just for the city that we live in, the explosion on the multiverse. For anyone who's been in GITEX last week, it was very noisy with everything that is Industry 4.0. Right? So there's a huge demand for real-time compute closer to home. Historically, we've leveraged the power of the cloud, especially for historic data. You need to do the number crunching, bring it back in, work on the analytics and the likes of that. From a security connotation, what happens now is you've immensely expanded the attack surface, right? So I'll sort of draw a few examples here. In the past, you could have a field device, provide some sort of telemetry, and then that's about it. With the power of 5G and compute coming to the field devices, you now have the potential of that being a lateral movement or a hop point, right? And even a dwell point. Add all of that together, from a security practitioner's perspective, it is a new nightmare. But having said that, it's also an opportunity, because previously the data used to come in one way. Now you have the ability to have actionable insights that allows you to enforce the control of the field as well, right? So that's the reason I started off with the double-edged sword example. Purely from a benefit to the security practitioners as well, the power of edge computing now immensely enhances and amplifies the capability as a security, a practice. Again, in the past, you'd have to leverage the power of the cloud, AI, and all of that. Again, it's at a distance, and as Moussa said, it's now coming closer, and that way you can now conveniently demarcate between real time and historic.
If you ask a question about the security challenges mentioned, and the team who were operating the OT device or IoT devices earlier, they were not IT people. It was operational people actually. Now, being it's getting converged into IT ops, so what challenge you foresee?
Well, let's look at edge computing. First of all, it's an ecosystem. It's more of a concept rather than just technology. So basically, you have to work in an organization. You have to build what we call a benefit realization matrix in order to be able to utilize any concept, and edge computing is one of them. So you have the 5G, which cuts down your latency to whatever, and then you have the user, which could be an individual or a team. Then you have the data, which need to be processed and computed, and so on. And so this is the whole idea of edge computing, is that you can have your data available to the right person at the right time in the right place, and so that you could reduce employee efforts, you could reduce customer efforts, you could make machines talk to machines more efficiently, and so on. But basically, all of this needs to be architected by people. So you need an enterprise architecture, a mapping that fits in place. And that goes back to what we call digital maturity and digital dexterity of the people and the teams that you have working on any concept such as the edge computing. So now, one of the biggest challenges that organizations actually spend money and adopt these concepts and starts to put on low code, no code, edge computing, whatever. And then basically you're not getting the percent utilization of all these things. The benefits that are going to be impact the organizations are going to be low, and so on. So what is the key here? The key is what we call digital dexterity of the people and the teams that are running these concepts. And that could be easily measured. So you could easily establish a baseline on every single employee and say this employee is digitally mature by this percent, digitally dexter by this percent. And in order for you to make the best use of edge computing in this area of the business or in this area of the organization to deal with these challenges and achieve these ambitions, then you need the team to be digitally dexter by this percent. You have the baseline. And so now you got to work on the people to be able to raise their digital maturity and digital dexterity so that they could actually take in this concept and make it pay back in benefits for the organization.
Having said that, the data, now it is distributed and it is created at the edge level, it is processed there, and it has to be transported to the data center, be it cloud or on-prem cloud. What kind of data management in terms of this distributed thing you would suggest, or you see that would there be a new model?
So, so I think in terms of, you know, this realization of what you just said, that we have like a decentralized, people talking about, hey, collective knowledge saying it's decentralized. Well, newsflash, for data people, we always knew it was decentralized. So we were screaming about the fact that, you know, the world didn't just revolve around structured data, you know, in a nice little central place. We talked about unstructured and semi-structured data, and running around being the champion for that and trying to break down those data silos, preventing people from being able to make decisions on what we call, for example, hot data or warm data. So if you think about like the healthcare profession, or let's say a policing situation where you immediately need an answer so that you can act or process something, you know, that type of data needs a whole different type of what you were calling model. I would even say architecture. You alluded to enterprise architecture. I think that many companies have been avoiding the concept of enterprise architecture. Now they're being confronted with a maturity issue. It's a strategic issue. From a data, information, and knowledge perspective, what does that mean? I'll give the example from a cybersecurity perspective. If the hacker thinks like graph, then if you want to be, you know, beside the hacker or in front of the hacker, you need to also think in graph. So that means that your data needs to be three-dimensional. It needs to be what we call in the business semantic. We need to build semantic architectures. We need to have people, data people, who would support those semantic architectures. So you would have new roles like knowledge engineers who would be building those graphs. They would be sitting right beside the data scientists that are doing the algorithms for a particular calculation or a particular decision, for helping a patient or something on the road or policing. So what it means is, yes, we already needed other data models. We already needed more mature data architectures, informational architectures, semantic architectures, to include things like documents, IoT, so hot data, voice, video. How do you think we're going to be able to do customer sentiment if we're just looking at a little subset of the data that doesn't represent the reality of the situation? How can a company be relevant if they don't even know what's going on? That they can't, you know, delve deeply into the data, the 7 whys. What happened and why it happened. Forget about predicting something. If you don't know what happened and why it happened, you're going to repeat history every time again. So we look at, you know, from a data perspective, we look at the full spectrum of data. What happened, why it happened, and you know, several layers deep, but also what could possibly happen, what could we possibly influence. So from a model perspective, architectural perspective, and from a strategy perspective, yes, we need to do it differently. And I would like to add one more thing. There's a lot of hype about having data strategy, but people have a kind of, I'll put it in a drawer, data strategy or PowerPoint data strategy. And I think people really need to realize that a data strategy is a living, breathing thing and needs to be at the maturity level of other key assets, like IT assets or human assets or financial assets. If we don't take it seriously and we don't manage it and we don't have the literacy for it, we will never have the capabilities and we will never be able to get in front of it.
That's interesting, a lot of data you're talking about, right? So that's raised another question about the communication. We need to take this data from this stage to another stage, right? So what is your thought about it?
That's a big one. So everybody's pointing at me when it goes to our edge. I'm not the edge owner, by the way. So, so communication, like what you just described, is we consider data now as a new currency. You cannot consider data as in a drawer plan, or this data is too old, I need to throw it somewhere. You need to find a way to centralize data, which is the key point. The biggest problem we're facing right now is how can we transmit that data from one area to the other. Now, everything is in the cloud, perfect, but like there is a lot of data that lies in documents, PDFs, lies in video files, audio files. Getting that data centralized somewhere requires a faster communication tool that we still in the building of them today. Typical example of this is a 5G example. So right now, I'll go a little bit technical, don't hate me. So we're dealing with 4G networks. 4G networks, it uses by maximum 700 megahertz speed up to 28 gigahertz speed. This will provide you maximum speed on the internet that is less than 200 megabits per second and latency of 200 milliseconds. In a square area, maximum is 5,000 devices can connect to the internet. 5G design came forth to solve three major problems that we have. Number one is latency, because when we're dealing with IoT, we need to take actions on the spot. 100 milliseconds, that's a life and death situation if a surgeon is doing an operation remotely. It's massive problem when it goes for example, autonomous driving and cars in the street. You need to take actions on the spot. So latency in 5G goes down up to less than 1 millisecond, which is a huge value for every single device to communicate and share data. That's part one. Part two, capacity. We're expected to have around, I think, 50 billion devices by year 2030 connected to the internet. 50 billion. In 5G, you move that 5,000 devices up to 1 million devices by single node. So imagine the amount of devices and sensors connected to the internet, the amount of information they can actually gather. And above all, back to the data track, we need to store massive amounts of information and move it from one area to the other. And that's where the bandwidth comes in handy. So because we use a higher frequency, we can transmit up to 100 gigabytes per second from one location to the other. And that's why we cannot talk about IoT and how it will shape our future without including 5G technologies to be part of the conversation in every single aspect of this.
That definitely is going to Dubai Airports now, which is going to give us some more insight on this communication and data processing and transfer from edge to the DC.
Yeah, so I'll probably just camp on to what he just said on the 5G. So there's 5G, which is an enhancement of the 4G, and then there's 5G plus, which is true millimeter wave, the whole shebang, right? And we're probably in this part of the world a little behind on that. I think there's a huge deployment happening in North America and some of those places, 5G plus. Now, when it comes to IoT, now you have to remember, when you deal with OT kit, or OT equipment, OT artifacts, assets, whatever you want to call it, they're technically, in cybersecurity terms, at least a decade behind, right? Often they're just dumb devices. They're meant to do either sensory or some form of actuatory activity. And the moment you bring in, and I'll sort of segue to the point I made earlier, your toaster in a pantry can potentially be your next pivot point for the attack on the enterprise. Why? Because everything's connected to an IP address. It's got a little compute engine sitting on it. And then you're talking about, as you said, I think it's Gartner who made the mention, 20 or 30 million coming up over the next couple of decades. That's an attack vector, an attack pattern amplified. If for those of you who follow cyber attacks, the Mirai bot attack was a classic example. It brought down DNS, it knocked off some of the biggest providers, cloud providers globally. Now, any industry, aviation or otherwise, when we look at field devices where human intervention has traditionally been the way of getting things to work, and now you're getting it connected into a grid of high speed, high bandwidth, high capacity, very low latency capabilities, the opportunities are immense. But from a security standpoint, how do I create that landscape or the new landscape on how I run my security program? Do I go for the attack surface or do I go for the protect surface, right? There's a huge debate about zero trust. Is it a concept? Is it adoption? But if you think about it, it's nicely timed in a way that we can adapt to Industry 4.0 challenges, because you can't protect everything. There isn't 100% security. If someone has a formula for it, we'll all be open to it, right? And you'd probably become the fastest billionaire out there. Exactly. Plug it off, switch the lights off, go into a little cocoon. So the point is IoTs, right? And it can be anything from a little sensory device or to, as I said, it could be something that runs a chiller, it could be something that runs a lighting system, it could be a building management system and all of that. When you get to that stage, working on approaching it from a protect surface perspective may give you a little better control on how we can manage the risks around those, right? Because obviously you're not going to have every IoT device in your ecosystem fired up, connected by 5G and switched onto the internet or any other network. You will do it in a phased manner. So as you go through, it's a good opportunity for you to rewrite your protect surface, and then thereafter build the layers of security you want to do. This is the new security world order, if you want to call it, right? And as the gentleman said, data is gold. So data can be useful from a security insight perspective, but at the same time, and again, I'll just sort of pull the edge compute. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of the watering hole attack. So essentially, you go to the point where data or data owners aggregate, and then you hit that point. So you basically can get as much of an impact as possible. Edge compute and IoTs bring that concept to your enterprise, to your doorstep, right? So these are all mini watering holes now, and that's where we start off from. So we need to have a paradigm shift in the way we look at these assets going forward. I think one of the questions that often came up was, do we have to know what the assets in our ecosystem are? For sure. You always have had to, you always will need to, and you always will need to do in the future as well, right? So it's kind of like going to a doctor and saying, I've got a sore throat. What does that mean? Now, if you don't let them know what the peripheral problems are, they give you a lozenges for your throat, right? But it could be something much bigger. So the context is very important, and I think Atiyah nicely explained, the more data points that you bring in, there's enrichment, there's context that you built onto it, and it applies on either way, it's operational security.
That actually raising another question about to Atiyah actually about the analytics part.
Analytics, in general, the opportunity.
You're talking about the data here, model.
Right.
How does the analytics work in terms of business value?
Yeah.
In terms of performance, or in terms of availability?
Availability, okay. So analytics. There's a lot of different types of analytics. I was alluding to analytics from the basic perspective of, business intelligence, what happened, why it happened. People seem to forget that they need to know why it happened in order to kind of project things forward. But I think in terms of edge, 55 billion devices being connected soon, that's just a wealth of information. The device information, and I would even say variety of information. So we already have all the boring documents, right? We already have the policies laying around. We already have, I don't know, depending on your industry, if you're in insurance, the assumption models, all of that stuff. If you mix, the thing is most people who believe that if you look at the data inside their company, they're going to get a lot of insight. Okay, today a little bit more than, let's say, 5 years ago, because there's just that much more data. However, real insight comes from mixing things up. So the different types of data. So I think from that perspective, we have a world of opportunity to get much better insights that are going to help you here and now. Everything from operational processes to tactical planning to strategic decision making. So from that perspective, it's great. That's an opportunity. Now, how can you grasp that opportunity if you don't have the right, let's say, inventory of people in your organization or outsourced to be able to tap into that? And I don't believe in homogeneous teams, meaning I don't believe all knowledge is in one team, in an IT team or security team or a data team. It's very much about being heterogeneous and mixing with outside knowledge, internal knowledge, bringing in people who are, let's say, non-traditional roles across the spectrum, not just for data. So for example, for me, we were just talking about cyber attacks. What's very important for me is that I have a bunch of ontologists and taxonomists documenting up the assets. Because if we don't know the concepts and we don't know what the assets are, how in God's heaven are we going to, know? It's not even to prevent all the attacks. It's just to be able to manage the attacks. I mean, it's that point. So in my mind, analytical capability on the fly, in the moment, is just as important, not just from a crisis situation, but for day-to-day operations. So I think we have more opportunity, but we need to be very real about how to grasp that opportunity. We need to start getting very serious about those homogeneous or those heterogeneous groups.
So how is it going to help in AI or any ML-based approach? Doctor, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of remarks on for data. Our experience from the Dubai Police side is first of all, you treat data in a life cycle approach. And the more you work on your infrastructure and architectural mapping, you'll be able to transfer a lot of the organization from anything periodic to real time. And once you arrive at real time, your actionable insight actually starts to work for you really, really well. And so basically you work on a benefit realization matrix and you make that happen. Now, it's people who actually use data. And so basically, are we going to make data work machine to machine or people to machine, machine to people, and so on? This is a good question that should be asked by any organization. What is the value of data at the end of the day? At the end of the day, you want to take any actionable insight and action it. Make sure that you are solving either challenges within the organizations or achieving some kind of ambitions, right? And so, this is the way you make your data work for you. Another thing that you really need to do here is treat data as you need to identify a single source of truth in everything. So a single source of truth for customer data, single source of truth for project data, single source of truth for X, Y, and Z. And once you aggregate all your data in these single source of truth components and make them read and write from each other, this is where you can take your architecture to a level where the whole organization can be operating in real time. Another thing added to that today, I don't believe that, personally, I think the forecast on the 55 billion is very low because of two things. Number one, we're driving more and more towards what we call responsive cities, which is above and beyond digital cities. This is where the whole cities now, the whole world makes digital twins of their components and their cities, and then the world of the metaverse. All of them put together, I believe that number will be highly impacted. So putting all of this together, edge computing is definitely one of the biggest solutions that we can benefit from. However, if it's not well situated within architecture mapping, it's really it's going to cost you a lot more than the benefits that you're going to realize. So the benefit realization matrix, or ROI, or percent utilization of your systems is going to be totally off.
Moussa, sorry.
You wanted to add something?
Yeah, just add a couple of points. Yeah, so from an analytics point of view, it's actually one of the trickiest conversation you can ever run about data, because we don't know what we don't know. It's a very bold statement to a lot of the data we actually collect every day. It has a lot of answers to us, but we don't know what we're looking for. And majority of the time, you'll find companies take CCTV, for example, videos, just store them somewhere for a retention period and just throw it away. Reality speaking, like taking your eye off and send whatever eye is sending, not send it to your brain, just store it as is, looking for someone else to tell you what you actually see. The power of AI now, it can convert the video feed that comes out of every single camera into an insightful information, that patterns you never look for with your human eyes, and you use the machine to identify those as soon as possible. Same goes for the audio files. It's still binary information for the machine. But reality speaking, if you took that binary file, convert it into something that you can actually operate on as AI, like transcribing the audio files, etc., you converted that data into a new source of information that didn't exist before, which will help you find out more insights about business. You thought you took them for granted, but they are not there anymore. That part is very important. The second part, which is the ML and AI part, this is, we need to find the data goes back to a centralized repository for training a bigger, more enhanced, advanced model. That is maybe one of the key objectives we should look for. And at the same time, we need to find a way to process data at the edge, pass it to machine learning algorithms, AI algorithms, to convert binary information that means nothing into an actionable insight that can operate on the spot, which is what we call the next layer of analytics, which is automation. We don't need to stop at the layer of, we know what happened, we know what will happen, we need to take it one step further. A machine responds to an action without you being involved, because there is a lot of different patterns that happens everywhere. We cannot recognize as humans 2 or 3 or 4 at a time. Machine can handle thousands at the same time.
On security front,
Can I just add one thing? I mean, please. The hyper analytics on the MicroStrategy part is talking to the same language that you were talking about. So you could be sitting on your desktop, and if you have MicroStrategy, it's actually going in the background and just popping out all kinds of intelligence to you right then and there.
Actually, that was one of the things that I wanted to add to what you were saying earlier. We are calling this semantic. It's semantic, meaning it's link-rich data. And that's what the basis of MicroStrategy is doing. It's good that a big player is getting into this field, because it came kind of out of, let's say, organic companies that were working on that universities, and now it is really mainstream. And to the point of AI and machine learning, it's super important for us to go away from dumb big data for AI. That's the reason for all the project failures. We really need to go to what we're calling semantic AI. And if we can achieve this, meaning have contextualized data, feed these training models, you don't need as much data. I'm not saying we don't have a lot of data, but we don't need a lot of dumb data. That's my point. And that would cause the failure rate to significantly change, and then people really get benefit out of it.
And if I just add one point from a security perspective, often what happens or what gets sold off as AI in security is actually augmented intelligence. It is not artificial intelligence. By the actual adaptive or actual adopted artificial intelligence, what you see in a slightly beefed up version of an RPA or some sort of automation. We're not too far off. From an insights perspective, it's amazing. It's really done leaps and bounds, right? But anything that's actionable, we still do have a bit of a gap between where we are and where we ought to be.
Would there be a lot of tools and services you mentioned about the IoT devices, inventory and profiling and stuff, and also you might have be interested in see the behavior of it in terms of security or performance, whatever way. Are there many solutions and services already in the market?
I think from an IoT, let's say Industry 4.0, right? Just to broaden the perspective. And I think one of the gentlemen in the opening session today hit the nail right on the head. He said, we have the capabilities at our doorstep. What we lack is use cases, right? And often with use cases, with a lot of the industries, we try the cookie cutting approach, and you'll very quickly find that it doesn't work. What works in medcare doesn't work in aviation. What works in aviation doesn't work in manufacturing. There are underlying principles that we can all adhere to and subscribe to, but you need to know what best fits your industry and what best caters to your nature of operation, right? That's the first thing. Secondly, where do we start? And why are we starting it? And I think you made a very key point there. Start with why. Right? Why are we doing, or why are we automating? Why are we, smartifying, if that's the right word, or adding on intelligence to something that's traditionally or historically never had that level of intelligence? It has to bring in a business value, right? It has to tackle a major business problem. It has to tackle a business value, or it's going to make you money, right? Now, what's the famous saying? With every right, there's a responsibility, right? And the same applies for capability versus security. So every time you bring in intelligence, you bring in the capability, you need to be mindful of security being at the core of it. You can't retrofit security. One of the examples I often give is, when you want to waterproof something, you can cling wrap it. You can do that to a piece of an equipment. You can't do that to a human being. You get the gist of it? You can't retrofit security into everything. So the earlier on you think about contextual data that has semantics, capabilities, aggregating data points, security has to be a key element that goes into the core of all of that.
Yeah.
Ethical.
Security with your population.
That's right. Ethical AI, that's right.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Okay, so can I share a use case? One of the things that we're working on, for example, we're collecting huge amounts of video from streets and cameras, and over 36,000 cameras are collecting all kinds of video. So that's where ethics and security comes in and plays a big role. But now we're thinking from top to bottom, from high level to low level. For example, so we have the SDG, with the Sustainable Development Goal, to reduce deaths and serious accidents on the roads by 50% by 2030. So this is where you start thinking use cases there. So that's where you bring in AI and machine learning. You take in all of this video, and now we're analyzing. So our algorithms are actually in the background analyzing people who do sudden shifts, people who are eating or drinking or smoking or not wearing a seatbelt. And then, being a soft policing organization, we answer to soft policing code worldwide. We're 16th in the world for soft policing index. We actually send you what we call a warning, and then we fine you. So, you've been caught not wearing a seatbelt or eating or shifting suddenly, and that, of course, endangers the roads. And so our idea now is not to fine you, so please, So we're trying to alter driver behavior, okay? So this is like one of the biggest cases we're working on and leading worldwide with that use case.
That's what you just explained there. The same concept for example, in banking. If the banks here did want to go to the level of, financial mentor, and instead of handing out warnings, giving advice, financial advice, in the moment that's relevant for the people, then people would spend, more efficiently or better or whatever it is for them. It's the same concept with policing, soft policing.
If you're benefit driven, and you start, for example, let's say I want to reduce customer effort, okay? So this is where you start to build your use cases around what is it that I can do within the organization, within my services, within my processes, to reduce and save time or cost or whatever. So reducing customer effort is the formula. The same thing if I want to reduce employees' effort, if I want to reduce errors on the service side or achieve any kind of benefit. So if you think in terms of benefits, you're likely to build the right use case to adopt and then make it work for you, to bring in the biggest percent utilizations and benefits.
Is it going to increase the cost, operational cost, or is it long term you're going to benefit out of this edge computing?
I think it's something that needs to be looked at within the ecosystem of the organization. And I also believe that it needs to be a gradual approach rather than just a full phase adoption. Because once you do that, you'll create something called digital friction. And if you create digital friction within the organization on the employee side, on the customer side, then you're going to spend a lot more time and money and effort to try to resolve that friction. And then, you'll just be going back and forth like it's really a good, the biggest answer that I can give you here is that go gradual, make sure that you have an enterprise architecture that speaks to your benefits, okay? So let's say this year you outline that you want to achieve 3 major benefits and beat 3 major challenges, okay? So this is where you build your use cases, spend your money, and if edge computing is going to play a role in that, then it's within that use case, and let it grow like a small baby and just let it grow.
I just wanted to add to that, when we're talking about data strategies, we look at, are we putting the emphasis on innovation, growth, operational things like business performance, whatever the type of business performance. It could be security, improvements or agility. It could be company resilience. It could be productivity of the employees. It doesn't matter what it is. But you need to be very clear what you're trying to monetize from a data perspective. And then get some good business rigor into it, like you explained with the benefits case. But also, from a data perspective, there's a whole practice called data monetization, and it's a study. It's not something, you just kind of happen to know because you're in the role. So in my opinion, there's a lot of learning. I think we need to be all very real with each other and, say, if we're doing this, we need to have the right people in the room, but we also need to take the right disciplines and apply them. And we don't need to recreate the wheel. There are many other, let's say, discipline areas like purchasing or library science or whatever that we can borrow from to actually make the businesses much more effective and much more be on top of things.
The other thing I would add is it's always a balancing act, right? So on one end, you have the need to innovate and create efficiency as you progress, as you evolve. On the other hand, you have the debate of cost. You have the debate of security, and now, most recently, the debate on sustainability as well. So what do you find the balance?
The topic of cost in particular, lots of companies, when they start and work on any project, they automatically think we have that idea and it will automatically go and work. So they target creation and then they go automatically, how can we scale and work with a massive amount of people at once? The problem is they don't know that it's a curve and it's a J curve. There is a lot of drops in the bottom. So like from the moment you actually build the idea, how can you release it to the market? Build the proper product market fit at some point of time before you actually say, I am ready to scale and reach more people. A lot of companies don't think of investment. Investment for them is upfront. We did this, that means that automatically things would work. I would distribute my investments across the years or across the stages that I'm in order to achieve success. IoT is one of those key initiatives that it is very new to the market. Lots of factors, lots of things are changing literally on a daily basis. So instead of putting everything of what I have today, I need to find what's the use case I'm playing with and how it will benefit from me in future. In Microsoft, for example, we treat every single partner that works with AI or works with IoT as a startup company. So the idea, even if they are massive scale, even if Salat, Do, whatever the company is, there is lots of things that can happen on stages, and they need to think about it as a small company trying to grow. Because if they think we're big, we're going to achieve a massive scale from day one, this is when we normally fail when an execution is small.
Would there be interesting cost-effective solution coming in the near future on the base of blockchain or of that sort towards the edge computing?
You see, the thing is, and I consciously use the word Industry 4.0, right? It's expensive. There's a lot more that comes through, right? Now, if you look at just from an adoption use case, and I've been sort of tracking that for a while. So if you look at the XR, and I'm calling it XR because you have the AR, the VR, and now the MR, right? So let's call it XR for argument's sake. In the past, you had to have a high-end compute, a GPU-intensive capability, sometimes hosted home, sometimes at your desktop, and then you work with headsets. Recently, it's been a lot more consumerized, which means I can have everything wired free. The only thing I need is just power, but obviously that comes with a compromise which you trade off on resolutions and what you can do with it. But when you actually come to commercial, enterprise, or industry adoptions, you will need a lot more, right? So it's always a moving target. Now, I don't want to keep banging on the security aspect of it, and I've just sort of emphasized on the need for doing it. But this is not going to stop. One of the things with industrial revolutions is things keep getting added on. And I think someone earlier on mentioned about Industry 5.0 that's on the cusp, right? Industry 5.0, right? So we just thought we started with 4.0, and then someone said 5.0. So when did I miss that boat, Yeah, so that's going to be an ever-evolving, this is how the new order of things are, right? We will have to interact with objects that have reachability, connectivity, and intelligence now. We will be working with, and I think you nicely summed it up with the semantics of it. You're creating enriched data, and you're working with a lot more data points. And the context keeps getting better and better and better.
And we're actually moving from IoT to IOET, which is the Internet of everything.
Everything, exactly. And I think the doctor mentioned it nicely. He said, the insights don't mean anything if you can't action it, right? So if you've got the insights, you've got to create clear context, and now you can action it. I think you've made a step ahead in terms of progress, but it's not a set and forget. right? It's a constantly moving ball.
Oh, two microphones. It's one of the things that I've kept as a mantra for myself as a chief data officer. Anything that we are working on as a team, it needs to be impactful. You know, to check yourself. What are you doing? You know, if this is not impactful, just don't do it. And even you might have to fight with your bosses about that. The other thing is it needs to be relevant. So if we're talking about business strategies or organization strategies, is this relevant to what that business strategy is? Doesn't matter if you're talking about edge or data or whatever. The other point, or at least from a data perspective, we talked about the trustability. So, you know, you can't trust something if you can't even identify it, you know. And of course, that things are actionable or usable. There's two differences in there. So yes, it's very important to have all those insights. It's very important to have a whole bunch of data, especially, you know, we in the data community love the fact that people are actually talking about dark data, that there's some, you know, gems in there that we need to explore. So, you know, the Internet of Things are picking up not just IoT sensor information, but, you know, on my device, I will have also a document and it's just as relevant and important. So this is the thing that I think is really important, that we hit those high level, impactful, relevant, you know, meaningful is the rich linked data, and the fact that it's fully usable and most importantly actionable, or else we're still at the starting gate.
Thank you. Any questions from your side?
I'm just taking my smart home offline today and I'm building a proper firewall, I guess.
We already know it's smart.
Anybody? Any questions from your side? Hope we could meet your expectation too, what we discussed.
My name is Ahmad. Actually, I'm from Cleveland Beach. My question is regarding that all discussions regarding the cybersecurity and the other aspects which we are dealing in this market at the moment. But the panelists, I need to know that, do you have any kind of some kind of the strategy for the biometrics things? Like you see that recently we have organized a biometrics day in this Dubai actually, so some days back, and we have I've got some opportunity to meet with some kind of the professors and scholars. So they were working on that. So do people think about that, the strategy for how can we protect that attack from the biometrics things like iris attacks and plus the iris hackings or plus the other biometrics issues? Do you have any kind of a strategy in your mind, or you are just working on that? Can you please just share us your any case studies or anything?
I personally was the consumer, meaning when I lived in the Netherlands, I volunteered to get my iris scanned so that when I moved through Schiphol Airport, which is the main airport in Amsterdam, I could skip the line. So I haven't worked on it myself. However, at least I can give the example from the Netherlands that I know that what went into the management of the, you know, highly sensitive personal information, everything was put into it from just a standard data governance perspective, having the right stakeholders involved with the military, police, and the airport security, you know, other government entities. So you have multiple different stakeholders involved. You had really superior, I'm not sure if they put blockchain on it at the time. This was back in 2018, 2017 when I was last there. But maybe in the meantime they have. I'm just saying they would have to have put in many, many layers of governance in order to ensure beyond, you know, cyber security measures to ensure that that type of highly sensitive information adhered to all the regulation, also met all the ethical, you know, possible, you know, societal comments about what was being done with it. There was no issues, as far as I know, for the last, let's say, up to 5 years of that time. I never heard of any business people or anybody who got the iris scan complaining that their identity had been stolen. This was in the Netherlands, so I just wanted to give you that case.
The solution actually lies in something called multimodal biometrics. So this is a lot bigger than just aspects.
Yeah, so this is the highlights.
So it's multimodal biometrics is what's going to move, where I take everything from behavior, and I can set his data.
No, my point is that, I'm sorry to bother, my point is that somebody has multiple kind of you see that biometrics and plus the other authentication issue. If we lost everything, like if somebody has accidental, lost everything, his iris biometrics and the other biometrics, what do we have any kind of the identity which we can just recover, restore that?
We can discuss this offline.
I would suggest
there's a good strategy. I can explain that. Say it's called data scrambling. The way we kept our personal information and credit card information, we scrambled and kept here and there. The similar way we can keep these data as well in multiple locations with different pieces, and you can assemble it later. So you will not lose it like that. But in case of a failure from one side, definitely an availability issue we need to address. All right. So we can answer your question offline. Thank you very much for your question, and that concludes our panel. Hope we could meet your expectation about this discussion. Any questions? We are ready to take offline. Thank you. Thank you very much.